Hello and welcome to the second episode of Holidays in the Sun. I am your host, Miles Hoyle. To refresh, the previous episode was about local music here in Norfolk, Virginia. We had Peter Overstreet from Spirit Gun talk with us and perform a little on the show, and a ton of other great acts were featured as well. But today we're going to get global, and this episode is specifically on world and folk music, and we're going to look all around on an international level for this episode. I'm extremely excited to tell you about not one, not two, not even three, but four amazing guests I'm having on this show. I am thrilled to announce in this episode we're going to speak with Ryan Lacey, who is the percussionist of the Celtic band Gaelic Storm. We're also going to speak with klezmer musician Daniel Kahn, as well as Annette Cogan, who is the singer and accordionist of New York City's klezmer outfit Golem, and also all the way from Lithuania, the Rakaja Klezmer Orchestra. So we have a very healthy dose of klezmer and Eastern European folk in this episode. But first, we're going to play Spin the Globe. I'm going to spin the globe and play you an artist from whatever country my finger lands on. Here we go. And looks like it's going to be... Colombia. Alright, well, here we go.
Pero antojado.
Tengo la camisa negra, hoy mi amor está de luto. Hoy tengo en el alma una pena y es por culpa de tu embrujo. Hoy sé que tú ya no me quieres y eso es lo que más me hiere. Que tengo la camisa negra y una pena que me duele. Mal parece que solo me quedé y fue pura todita tu mentira. Que maldita mala suerte la mía que aquel día te encontré. Por beber del veneno malevo de tu amor yo quedé moribundo y lleno de dolor. Respiré de ese humo amargo de tu adiós y desde que tú te fuiste yo solo tengo la camisa negra, porque negra tengo el alma. Yo por ti perdí la calma y casi pierdo hasta mi cama. Cama, baby, te digo con disimulo que tengo la camisa negra y debajo tengo el difunto.
A enterrártelo cuando quieras, mamita.
Así como lo oyes, tengo la camisa negra, ya tu amor no me interesa. Lo que ayer me supo a gloria, hoy me sabe a pura. Miércoles por la tarde y tú que no llegas, ni siquiera muestras señas. Y yo con la camisa negra y tus maletas en la puerta. Mal parece que solo me quedé y fue pura todita tu mentira. Que maldita mala suerte la mía que aquel día te encontré. Por beber del veneno malevo de tu amor yo quedé moribundo y lleno de dolor. Respiré de ese humo amargo de tu adiós y desde que tú te fuiste yo solo tengo la camisa negra, porque negra tengo el alma. Yo por ti perdí la calma y casi pierdo hasta mi cama. Cama, embrujo.
That was Juanes. Up next in this game of Spin the Globe, we're arriving at Pakistan. This is the musicians of Satchal Studios. An interesting documentary on this group called Song of Lahore came out a few years ago. Excellent film that showcases the group performing in New York City with jazz legend Wynton Marsalis. Definitely worth a watch. And this is their arrangement of the Dave Brubeck classic Take 5 that turned them into a viral YouTube sensation. Joining us shortly, I'll be interviewing Daniel Kahn, who does klezmer music and Eastern European and indie folk music. But before he does, I'd like to play you a song by his group, The Painted Bird. Here is the opening track on their album Partisans and Parasites. This is their song Jasselbeer.
Jasselbeer, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hij zegt Jasselbeer und ich dien in de militair. Ai, 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 ai. Stiefel draag je gaan mondier, handelde wie een officier. Ja, ai, 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 ai. Ik ben ik als zuster jong, gelijk Podesh was met een zong. Ai, 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 ai. Handen weer gepik, zo schwer, zusterij op in een treer. Ja, ai, 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 ai. Jasselbeer, dient in militair. Jasselbeer, dient in militair. Jasselbeer, dient in militair. Jasselbeer, dient in militair. Yes, my name is Jasselbeer and I serve the military. Steel-toed boots, a uniform, keep this soldier's carcass warm. I used to work in a factory till the army drafted me. Now I work for Army Brass Factory, can kiss my ass. Jasselbeer, serve the militaire. Jasselbeer, serve the militaire. Jasselbeer, serve the militaire. Jasselbeer, serve the militaire. So gemädellois, Gib mir ein Brand von Wein und Fisch und was weiter sag ich nicht. I said every night I hit the town, all you ladies gather round. Give me brandy, give me wine, give me something else that's fine. Jasselbeer, dient in militair. 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 Jasselbeer, dient in militair.
You just heard Daniel Kahn and The Painted Bird, and I'm thrilled to announce that Dan is here to speak with us today. So Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
No sweat.
I'm a huge fan.
No, I appreciate it.
So Dan, you're originally from Detroit, but you're living in Germany, and then at the moment you're in New York City for a while. Tell us about your travels. What's going on? You're, if I'm not mistaken, in a musical of some sort?
Oh yeah, I'm performing in a musical review at the Volksbühne Yiddish Theater here in New York. It's kind of a summer gig, and it's a little bit outside of my it's outside my wheelhouse a bit, but I'm having fun with it, you know.
That's neat. Dan, I'd like to, if we may, sort of take a walk through your discography together and talk about all these different records you've put out. And I wanted to kind of start at the beginning and ask you about, I believe your first solo output was Uprooted Oak. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, Uprooted Oak is actually my last solo release. I had made 3 or 4 records as part of this folk music collective in Michigan called Earthwork. And yeah, Uprooted Oak was kind of my parting shot at my hometown, 2004. But the first solo record that I made one in on a farm in Michigan in 2002. That's out of print, but we're gonna bring that back, called Pegboard Blues. And then 2003, I made a record in New Orleans called Rivermouth when I was living down there. And then I made a couple of other little small recordings. And then in 2004, beginning of 2005, really, I made Uprooted Oak. And 2005, I made Uprooted Oak. And then rather than ever like really tour those songs or make an investment in trying to get that record out to the world, I just picked up and moved to Berlin in spring of 2005. And musically I didn't look back much, although I still go every year to the Earthwork Harvest Gathering, which is a really wonderful music and arts festival the third weekend in September up in Lake City, Michigan. And so I'll be there next month, and I never miss one. And it's a really wonderful group of artists and people.
Wow. I know you play accordion, and it seems from the liner notes of your albums you're actually kind of a multi-instrumentalist. You play a lot of instruments, but could you tell us what instruments do you play?
I play guitar, electric guitar and acoustic guitar. I play banjo sometimes, ukulele. I play piano. I play organ when I can get my hands on one. I don't know, if it's got strings or keys, I can sort of get my way around it. It depends on what the song wants.
Oh. And your record, the first International, was Soy Korolenko and Oi Division. How did that project come about? I mean, Soy's Russian, Oi Division's from Israel. How'd you meet?
Well, that record, it was actually after the first Painted Bird record. The first Painted Bird record was in 2006, but we reissued it later on. The International was a very spontaneous project. I had met Soy Korolenko, who's a good friend and a great collaborator. He's from Moscow. I had met him in the summer of 2006 in Canada, at Cles Canada. And it was kind of love at first hear. And we started talking about things, and then the next winter I was in Moscow for the first time. It was my first time traveling to Russia with the band Nayachovichi, with Vanya Zhuk. He's a great guitarist, friend of mine. And Soy and I, everybody knows him as Pasha. Pasha and I, we had a gig together where the idea was to just sing all kinds of left-wing songs. Yiddish left-wing songs, American, Russian. It was just like songs and politics. And we made up a set list, and some of them were playful, some of them were more serious. But we made up a set list, and at the top of the set list, I wrote L'International, the International, like the French. But then I changed it to L'International, which means, the undernational. And that became our brand, our name. And then the following summer, he and I were invited to come to Israel and work with the band Oi Division and play some gigs and make some recordings. And I went, and it was an overwhelming and stressful time, and we made that first record in just a couple of days. I was furiously writing translations and versions of things and new songs, and so was Pasha, and it turned into this sort of dialectical concept album, where we go back and forth between ideologies and things like that and languages. And Oi Division was with us on several of the tracks, and then he and I continued recording several without them. And this guy, Victor Levine, who runs Alris Media, really sort of shepherded the project, and that became the first International. And we went on to create several more programs of songs. One whole program that dealt with the ideological history of Russia in the 20th century. Another one that re-examined questions of nationalism. And these were like the second, third, and fourth internationals. And they have yet to be released. We're talking about releasing the third and fourth international soon.
Oh wow! So you've got kind of material backstock, so to speak, like projects pre-recorded that's not even out yet.
Yeah. Oh, it's been there. We've been recording on those things for the last 10 years. So we'll probably bring those out in some form. And Pasha and I, we have a very productive friendship. When we hang out, something usually comes out of it, either a new song or a translation of one another's songs. And he and I run into each other all over the world. He's a good friend. And so out of that relationship came also the brothers Nazaroff years later, 2010 or 11, I think it was 11. We were again in Israel, and I was feeling so, by the end of it, and we did more of these recordings for the International, and I was so exhausted from that trip. We were flying from Tel Aviv to Warsaw to play more shows there, and that was where we had the idea to do the brothers Nazaroff. Nazaroff being a big hero of his and mine and Vanya's and everybody else who got involved with the brothers Nazaroff. So that idea was born on a plane full of nuns traveling from Israel to Poland.
From 2009 to 2013, you released 4 albums with the Painted Bird on Orienta Music. It's a record label based in Berlin, and I was wondering how the group wound up on this label.
Well, it's not so easy to get your hands on Orienta CDs in America, and they operate on an older model over there. CDs are not quite as dead in Germany as they are in the States. I'm trying to drag our music off of the CD and into the world. And so, like with this next, we've got our 5th album that's going to be coming out later on this year, at the end of the year. And I really want that to be totally available. All of our stuff's on streaming sites now. It's on Spotify and all that shit, We came to Orienta at a time when, I don't know, we were really trying to get a foothold in the more established German music scene, and they're a very, very small label, but they have a kind of boutique niche for Eastern European music, klezmer music, tango, and Romanian and Roma music. So they, they're part of the team, but it's not like they're not a major record label. I don't know if there are many of those anymore.
And your first record that the Painted Bird did on that label, The Broken Tongue. Could you tell us about that? And I'm really curious about what was your writing process, your recording process. Did you guys record analog? Did you track separately, together? Can you tell us about the creation of it a bit?
Well, it varies from record to record. The Broken Tongue was very DIY, but it was digital. It was early digital. I don't know if you remember those Roland multi-track digital recorders. There was no screen or computer. It was a standalone.
Oh, the like studio in a box type thing.
Yeah, there was like maybe 5 years when these things were in use before people got Pro Tools and everything on their computers. It was digital that had an internal hard drive, and you could offload very laboriously onto CD-ROMs. So there was like a CDR extra drive that you could buy. I'm sure if I tried to plug in any of those sessions now, they would not be readable. But I recorded. In the States, I had recorded 2 of my solo records on one of these things. And then when I moved to Berlin, I met a guy who was in the klezmer scene who grew up as kind of a punk in East Berlin, in East Germany. And he was like in the punk rock scene in communist East Berlin. And through that, he got into klezmer and like Eastern European folk music. And he had an extra apartment that they had squatted in the 90s that he had turned into his instrument workshop and recording studio. And so The Broken Tongue was recorded there by me, pretty much. And he would help out. I mean, we had the band with us. We had... we didn't have our drummer yet, but we had Michael Tuttle on bass, whom I've known for 16 years. And we had some of the other original members, a German fiddler by the name of Johannes Kalgresa. We had some guests from like the New York klezmer scene who were traveling through town, like avant-garde jazz klezmer dudes like Brandon Seabrook and Eric Rosenthal. We had Detlev himself, whose apartment it was. He played some trombone for us. I had guest singers. It was everybody pitched in. And Barrett Hildebrandt, who went on to be our clarinetist for the next record after that, and a lot of touring. So that record really, when I look back at it now, and it's been a long time since I've heard it, I think it's pretty. There's some pretty adventurous stuff there. It gets pretty heavy. I was singing in Yiddish for really the first time only those years. I didn't take Yiddish seriously as a language until I moved to Berlin. I was into klezmer already. I had been into klezmer for a couple of years, but Yiddish as a sung language was something that even though I had some experience singing a song here and there, to take it seriously as a focus was really once I moved to Berlin in 2005. And so when you hear me on that record, which we made a year later, it's very new to me. And writing songs that would, sort of weave in Yiddish words, writing songs with Jewish musical ideas, harmonically and melodically. I never saw this as making a klezmer record, and I still don't see the Painted Bird as a klezmer band. But it was really just about making a kind of a songwriter or concept album that was a place to put a lot of the uncomfortable questions that I was confronted with living in Germany, living in Europe, and also just in the world at that time. It's important to remember, like for me these days, when things seem so bleak politically and socially, that it's not really any darker than we felt in the mid 2000s, when the war in Iraq was just it was a horror show. You know, every day there was just carnage in the news, and we had this criminal regime in America that had lied about why we needed to go to war, and it was part of why I left. You know, and so making that record was a way of stepping back from that stuff, because I was getting into this older history, but I really felt that it also related to the world in which I was living at the time.
I recall those times. On to the next album, Partisans and Parasites. How did this album come to be? How did this album evolve from the previous one?
Well, I mean, it's how it is when you have a band, you know, like you fill up the tank, you know. It's like we were out there playing all the songs that we did on that we had on Broken Tongue, and then new songs would pop up, you know, and we started playing Yossel Bear, and we started playing Kiss the Fascists or Embrace the Fascists, you know, and then we started playing, and then eventually I wrote Parasites, that song, after reading I was in the Paris airport, and I was reading a short story in a magazine told from the perspective of a tapeworm. So I was thinking a lot about parasitism. And, you know, as I got more and more into Yiddish, I'll say something. You know, like in the Yiddish music scene, I've never seen more amateur ethnomusicologists and folklorists and researchers who are really doing work on a level that were we talking about classical music or many other genres. I mean, it would be hard to imagine this level, this depth of exploration anywhere besides in an academic context. I mean, these are real scholars, and they're scholar artists. To be a part of this community of scholar artists, I mean, I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. When I first encountered the Yiddish culture world, whatever, it was really like in 2003, 2004, and I was a total outsider. I mean, my Jewish cultural education was a completely different one.
Speaking of which, your records are, you know, bilingual, and you speak German and Yiddish and English, and I was curious, did you grow up with Yiddish in your household, or like have you always known to speak it, or did you learn later in life?
No, I didn't grow up with Yiddish as a language. My grandmother spoke Yiddish, of course, but she didn't ever speak it with me. And for me, it was a cultural language that I came to much later, through this interest in the songs and the literature and the history, and becoming a part of this community, you know. And my first real engagement with Yiddish song, besides just singing songs that I didn't necessarily understand entirely, was as a translator, was translating and making English versions. It was really about English. It was really about making good English songs that were based on Yiddish songs. And the first song I did that with was Holiet Holiet Beze Vinten, which is the first song on the Broken Tongue. And then I went on to do other songs, and it was a process. I mean, I just sort of stumbled on it myself. Later I found that Theo Bickel, that was his process. When he would learn a song, he would always make a singable English version of it. But working with folks like Michael Alpert and Adrian Cooper and Theo later on was just such a huge inspiration to me. On the one hand, I had the impulse to kind of break with some of the aesthetics that I was seeing in a lot of klezmer, like to bring in some punk sensibility and some, indie folk sensibility, things like that. At the time, I guess what you would have called indie folk. And as I got deeper and deeper into it, I came to really understand the aesthetic language of this culture as well. And so that's why I'm doing this musical here, which, if 10 years ago, if I'd seen this, I would think it was just complete kitsch. And, maybe sometimes it is, but I still have fun doing it because it's in a certain tradition. And I love the old material. The old material does what it's built to do, and it's very funny and entertaining, and it can be moving. But at the time, I was really looking for the songs, Yiddish songs, German songs, that spoke to me either in terms of the energy or the gesture of it, or the stories that it told. So that was how one album led to the next. I would write some songs, I would adapt some songs, I would cover some old songs, and we'd sculpt them together into an album. And then we traveled all over with that stuff. We used to tour a lot more than we do now. We're hoping to get back out on the road next year more with our new record.
And the opening track on that album, Y'all Bear Out, that we played earlier on the show, I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, I noticed I saw a YouTube video and you kind of alter it a little bit live. For example, there was no guitar on the live version that I saw. That instead there was a clarinet solo where the guitar solo is, and there's this wonderfully insane ripping guitar solo in it too on the album version. And I was kind of wondering, how you do it live versus the album, and how that guitar solo came about, and really what that song's about.
Well, we do it live. I think we do it better now. I think we know that rhythm better now, but it's different every time, depending on who we're with. The story of that electric guitar solo was like, I had the tracks on a hard drive or something. We're talking about 2009 or 8, I guess, when we were recording it. And I was in St. Petersburg, Russia, and Vanya was living there at the time, Vanya Zhuk. And I just had him put the thing on and just record his Les Paul. And it was just like this insane, like, he does all this like hammering, like this Van Halen shit. And yeah, I just thought it was fucking awesome. That song is a very old song. It's by Itzik Monger. It's a kind of a playful. Yeah, I mean, it's a satiric song about a soldier. It's very macho. It's got a vulgarity to it that I like. And you can hear me at one point screaming a joke in Yiddish. And I really just did that so that I would have an excuse to print a more understandable version of it in the lyrics. And that's a joke. That's a joke that was collected in a great collection of Yiddish stories and jokes called Rote Pomeranzen. This joke about the soldier who runs away. He goes AWOL from the front, and then they find him and they say, kind of a coward are you? You took an oath to serve the emperor, the Kaiser, the Tsar, to serve the Tsar loyally. And he says, "Oh, but Your Honor, I am indeed a loyal soldier. I hate the enemy so much I don't even want to look him in the eye." I really like that joke. So yeah, it's for all the deserters out there.
I was wondering of a project you mentioned earlier that I wanted to ask about, the brothers Nazaroff, and how it pays tribute to the old Prince Nazaroff record. From what I understand, it's entirely songs from that old record that you're recreating and re-recording on that release, which was released by Smithsonian Folkways Recordings.
Yeah, it's our least creative effort, and that's what I love about it. You know, there's nothing like artistically highfalutin or anything. It's not. We just wanted to play the songs that he did and play them hard and let them do what they were built to do. You know, it's Yiddish street music. You know, it's functional, and so it was great that Smithsonian worked with us on bringing it out and making a really nice package and everything. It's, he was on Folkways.
And that's reminds me of another thing I wanted to ask you, because I know Smithsonian Folkways, they're usually really interested in like historical content, historical recordings. They don't necessarily normally sign newer groups, so I was curious if they approached you or if your group approached them, and how it all came to be that this record got released on that label.
No, we approached them because we had already done the bulk of the recording.
Oh, earlier on you mentioned a new record coming out, and I wanted to ask you about that. If there's a title in the works or what the status is on it, when can we expect to see it? How can we find it?
Absolutely. Well, hopefully this one will be a lot easier to find than the other ones. But it is going to be on Orienta, but it'll be on all the streaming platforms, all the digital platforms. We're making a bunch of videos to go with it, and I kind of want anybody who wants to hear this record or get this record, I want them to just be able to get it. The record is called The Butcher's Share. The Butcher's Share. It's like what we all owe to the butcher.
And for the artwork and the lyrical content, is there a certain theme or?
I really like it. All the artwork is by Eric Drucker. I don't know if you know his work. He's a really terrific graphic artist, painter. He used to work with Allen Ginsberg, and he did all these great posters of resistance movements on the Lower East Side. And it's a very political record. It's much more political than our last album, Bad Old Songs. Yeah, there's songs about economics and war and unions and women's liberation, and there's a partisan song, and there's songs that are about the entire history of Jews in Western civilization from an economic standpoint. There's also like some really dark original material, some of which I wrote for a theater production, but like just pitch black death songs. It's about death and freedom, pretty much the whole record. Songs like, we got a song called Freedom is a Verb, a song called No One Survives. And there's quite a bit of Yiddish on it. There's less German than on the other records. There's old Yiddish songs, new Yiddish songs, adaptations, translations, duets. I cover a wonderful song by a friend of mine, Joshua Davis, who's from that earthwork community in Michigan, and he wrote a great song about Isaac and Ishmael, which is really about, the brotherly relationship between Jews and Arabs.
Wow. Well, I'm really excited for this album to come out.
I look forward to it coming out.
As do I. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us and tell us about your music and the journey that you've kind of been on and everything that you're up to. Really sincerely appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Right on. Thanks a lot, Miles. Take care. Sag gesund. Okay. Bye.
And now we're going to go ahead and hear a track from one of the projects Daniel Kahn was in. This is the Brothers Nazaroff with Mädlach wie Blumen, or Girls Are Like Flowers.
wie Blumen, reizend und schön. Sagt mir, wie nennt ihr dem Zauber entgehen? Tralala, 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 la la la.
Girls are like flowers, tempting and fine. Their charm has a power, strong and divine. Tra-la-la, 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 la-la-la, la-la-la.
Augen viel Geschäft und träumen Masel. Ich sehne, sei doch sich dem Sof von der Welt. La la la, 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 la la la.
Eyes full of magic and diamonds and pearls. They show me the tragic end of the world. Tra-la-la, 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 la-la-la, la-la-la.
Eucher Gelächter in stiller Gesang, Schmeichler wie ich weiß, in silbernem Klang. Tralala, 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 la la la, la la. Life would be dismal and dark as the night if girls didn't give us their beauty and light. Tra-la-la, 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 la-la-la, la-la-la. Das Leben wird mir jetzt in finsterer Zeit, wenn ihr wollt nicht sprechen, kein Licht in kein Schein. Tra-la-la, 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 tra-la-la,
That was the brothers Nazaroff performing Maidlock v. Bloomin', or Girls Are Like Flowers, featuring Daniel Kahn. Again, a huge thanks to Daniel for taking the time out of his busy schedule to speak to us today. It is sincerely appreciated. Coming up next, before part one of this episode ends, we're going to speak with Ryan Lacey, who is the percussionist for Celtic group Gaelic Storm. Before we talk to Ryan, though, I've done one last spin for this episode of The Globe, and it has landed on the Caribbean. So we're going to hear a track by Calypso Rose. This is Rum and Coca-Cola.
If you ever go down to Trinidad, they make you make Trinidad like a paradise. Rum and Coca-Cola, go down Point Cumana, both mothers and daughter, working for the Yankee dollar. Working for the Yankee dollar. Working for the Yankee dollar. Chica, Chicory to Mona Isle, native girls all dance and smile. Head so celebrate his leaf, make every day like New Year's Eve, singing rum and Coca-Cola, go down Point Cumana, both mothers and daughter, working for the Yankee dollar. Trinidad girls are very nice. They out to picnics day and night. The GI say they treat them right when they dish them a plate of barefoot rice. Rum and Coca-Cola, go down Point Cumana, both mothers and daughter, working for the Yankee dollar. 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 That is very nice, eh?
Hey Miles, how you doing? It's Ryan.
Hey Ryan, thanks so much for coming on Holidays in the Sun. Really appreciate it. I know Gaelic Storm is coming off strong on a brand new album right now, but how long have you been in the group now?
Yeah, I've been. This is my 15th year.
Ah, so you've been with the band since 2003, and how'd you wind up joining the group?
I'm from Bakersfield, California, and I played in a bunch of bands there. I moved to Yosemite for about a year, and I played some music with some friends there. But then I moved to Europe. I moved to Ireland, and I was with a ton of bands over there. I was all over the place. I would tour. I was like a house drummer for a record label over there, so I'd go out with all their bands. So I would do, singer-songwriter, any singer-songwriter band or rock band or anybody, reggae bands, funk bands. I went out with hip-hop bands. Anybody that needed a drummer, I was the guy for that record label. So I'd go on tour in Ireland and England and stuff with those guys, which was pretty fun. My main band over there was called Guava. We got on the radio a few times and everything, but nothing really came of it. And then I moved back to the States. I got in a bad skateboard accident, and I ended up breaking a bunch of bones, and all the bands decided to keep them going because they were all, money-making bands. So I had to give up those guys, and then just things kind of fizzled over there after that. And then I moved back to the States to get a better level of musicianship. So I went to college out in Los Angeles. And then about 6 months after that, I was working around Hollywood and with a bunch of different bands over there, auditioning for different bands. Then I found Gaelic Storm, like 6 months after graduating. So, yeah. So the guy, one of the ladies from the school in college. She's like, "Hey, you used to live in Ireland, right?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Did you play Irish music?" Completely laughed in my face. Of course I did. No, of course I did. So she got me the audition. I was gonna be playing, like what I was kind of skilled in at that point. I did a lot of Brazilian, kind of Cuban percussion. So, and that's kind of what they look for and kind of thing. So I kind of fit perfectly into that mold. So it's kind of a hybrid kit that I play with Gaelic Storm. Yeah, everything kind of clicked. It was all just like the right thing at the time. So.
And I understand Gaelic Storm tours rather heavily.
No, we're about 200 days on the road, but we're still doing about 110 to 120 gigs a year. So, and it's been consistently like that for the last 15 years, really. We might have done more here and there. Might have done 130, 140 at a time, but now we're all getting a little bit older, and two of us have kids. Actually, three. The bagpiper, he's got a kid on the way too. So we're all very family conscious as well. It's a big family, basically. We all been together for so long. So.
And I understand the group had kind of a rather monumental moment in the band's history was when both the inclusion and appearance of the song Irish Party in the Third Class was in the film Titanic. And I was wondering if you could tell us about that experience. It must have been exciting. And were you in the group at this time? Could you tell us about that?
I was not in the group at that time. That was about 1997, I think, 1998. I think they filmed it in 97, and then the movie came out in 98. Don't quote me on that, but I think it really changed their career. They were kind of like having a great time in the pub kind of band, and they just it kind of blossomed from there, and people picked up on that, I think, and then the producer for the Titanic, when they walked in, they had heard about this vibe that was going on in this bar. And Murphy, the singer, he was a part owner of the bar, and he bartended there and everything. And then so Gaelic Storm would play at his bar all the time. So it was called O'Brien's, the bar. And then the producer came in, saw the vibe, and then came in a second time and said, "Hey, I want you guys to be in the movie," and that was that.
Now, I know the group has a brand new record called Go Climb a Tree, and then I was also just wondering, what is Gaelic Storm's writing and recording process like?
We've kind of come up, the last few records, we've come up with a good system now. Me and Steve and Pat and another guy that used to be in the band called Steve Waymeyer, we'll do some writing sessions. They get maybe 10 to 12 songs kind of ready, vocal, lyrics and everything. And then Steve will have like a basic idea of what he'd like it to sound like, kind of thing. And then me and Steve will go into the studio. Steve is a guitar player, by the way. Me and him will go in there, and because we don't have a bass player, so me and him are basically the rhythm section. So we'll go in there and lay down the bare bones of the song, and we'll do a lot of arranging at that point. And then we'll bring in the bagpiper and the fiddle player after the fact, and then Pat and Steve does vocals as well. But then Pat this time he recorded out in Maryland, so we did a lot of stuff coming back and forth from the studios. But we mainly record down in Austin, Texas. That's where Steve lives. So in our studio out in Dripping Springs, we've been at that studio now for. I think it's 9 records. Yeah, no, 8 records. So we're pretty used to it. And our engineer Pat Mansky is for me hands down the best engineer I've ever worked with, and he's pretty much like the 6th member of the band, which great too. Yeah, he's a drummer and he's a banjo player, guitar player. So he kind of knows where we're coming from, and he speaks our language. But he's also a phenomenal producer and engineer. So, and then Steve is the executive producer. I help produce. So I get co-producer because I'm there all the time, and then Pat does some co-producing as well. But Steve is the kind of the executive producer, and he has kind of final say, if that makes sense.
Wow, that's great. I mean, it's neat to hear that you guys kind of have a home base for recording instead of like sometimes, you hear about other groups, they kind of jump around from studio to studio while they're on tour or something like that.
Yeah, we just, it's kind of like a, like a second home at this point. We spend so much time there. I was down there at least, I think a total of 2 months here and there, like back and forth. I'd be down 12 days and 10 days and kind of on and off. But then, and the record, actually, we just found out today, the record got #1 on Billboard World Music Charts.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, it's really new, right? It's only been out for like a month or two.
Not this last Friday, but the Friday before, the 28th of July. So yeah, we're all really stoked. We just found out today, so we're all, it's a good day.
Well, congratulations. That's wonderful. I mean, you guys certainly deserve it. It's a fantastic album.
Thank you very much.
I noticed that you have kind of a different setup than the standard rock kit in terms of your drumming and percussion. Like it's not necessarily just a standard kick, snare, hi-hats and toms. You have they look like djembes or something, some sort of hand drums. Could you tell us about your setup and, what you use and how it affects the live show and recording and why you use it?
My main drum, which I treat almost like a snare, but I play with my hands, it's a djembe. Because it really does affect a lot of the things, because on stage, like I said, we don't have a bass player. So, Steve will tune his guitar, have one guitar string down to I think it's a low D, maybe. And then I do a lot of compensating for the bass in the bottom of the djembe, the low tones. And then I have a kick drum. I have 2 doom decks, which I use kind of as toms, if that makes sense. And then I have a ride cymbal and a hi-hat as well, like I said. And then I have a wave drum. It's just, some wave drum is like a chord synth kind of thing that I just use every once in a while. I barely touch it in the show, but it's it's just for accents here and there. But yeah, it completely changes the vibe. I do a lot of straight hand percussion. Then I'll do I use stick in one hand for kind of rock grooves almost, or funk grooves kind of thing. So I kind of mix it up. I've kind of built my own style with this set. The original drummer had a very similar set, not exactly the same, but he used a lot of the same elements. So I kind of took his thing and morphed it into my own. But it's a completely different animal, if that makes sense, from playing. Because I still play drum kit, but it's just a whole different vibe. If that makes sense. The world music kind of thing. So.
Yeah, for sure. Could you tell us about your influences personally, both Celtic and not Celtic? I mean, I know you're in a Celtic band, but just all your influences in general as a drummer.
I grew up in a really big bag. I listened to a lot of hip hop growing up, and I listened to a lot of rock music. My favorite drummer is not very well known, but his name is Steve Gorman. He was the drummer for the Black Crowes. Black Crowes have always been my #1 favorite band, I think. I just liked his style. He never kind of overplayed. He's almost like a Ringo kind of player. He played what was really meant to be played, I think. And I just love that kind of vibe. But other favorite band would be the Beastie Boys. So those two would be. Mike D was a big inspiration, which is kind of funny. People laugh at that one, but Mike D was, a phenomenal drummer, and he did the same thing, kind of a Ringo style, but on the other spectrum, funk and punk rock spectrum. And then of course, like Questlove, I loved him growing up. I got to do a gig with him one time, which is amazing. I'll never forget. When it comes to Irish music, I think my biggest influence is the band Keela. You know those guys?
Keela?
Keela, Kila.
Oh no, I don't believe I do.
They hands down are my favorite Celtic band. They're out of Dublin. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost kind of gypsy Celtic music. It's like nothing you ever heard of. I suggest there's a record called Toge Go Boge. A lot of it's most of it's sung in Gaelic, but it sounds like African. It's insane. You just got to go check it out. If you're listening to this podcast, go check out Kila. Kila. Hands down, one of my top 5 bands. They've always been a big inspiration. So that'd be my big one.
Well, yeah, I'll certainly have to check them out. Very possibly play one of their songs on this episode at some point, or part 2 of this episode.
And I know. You were playing with Carbon Leaf, right? Were you sitting in with Carbon Leaf for?
Well, yeah, but not exactly. I mean, I didn't join their group. I did a guest performance, basically. So, but yeah, once in DC for Shamrock Fest, and then once in Maryland at Irish Fest in Annapolis. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Nice. Well, I was just gonna say, because I know when I met you there, you were in that guest slot with Carbon Leaf, and I know they're not completely Celtic, but they're one of my favorite bands.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Barry's got a fantastic voice. Really fun group. Great, huge discography. Tons of stuff going on with their stuff. So yeah, it's not totally Irish, but there's definitely a healthy portion of like Celtic and Irish stuff in their sound. Yeah, they're a fantastic group.
Yeah, and I mean the voice, you know what I mean? The voice, and I mean the whole package is great, but his voice, I love that dude's voice. And harder on guitar, and it's a great blend. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to fill our listeners in real quick, Ryan and I met very briefly when our groups played at the same show for Get Shamrocked out in Murrieta, California. And so we met briefly out there, and that kind of really helped spur, after seeing him drum and seeing their group, me wanting to speak to him for the podcast. Like, you know, when I was racking my brain, like, oh, who would be fun to chat with? And then, duh. So, but I was wondering if you could tell us about your upcoming tour schedule and, like, what shows you got going on now.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're doing the next gig. Still Milwaukee Irish Fest. We're doing 3 days there. Actually, the Thursday night, that's the 17th. I guess that's next week. We're doing like a throwback Thursday, so we're doing only songs from the first 3 Gaelic Storm records, which is going to be pretty fun. I'm looking forward to it. We're learning a bunch of songs for that, and that's gonna be good. And then we're doing a lot of the other festivals. We're doing Pittsburgh, and we're doing Kansas City, and then there's shows along the way. We're tons of little shows. We're doing Green Bay and Des Moines and all over the place.
Cool. What's the best way our listeners can check out your tour dates and if you're coming to their town?
The best way to check it out is if you just go to GaelicStorm.com. You click on the tour and it's right there. So.
Oh, great. I apologize to our listeners. I know this has been a little bit of a rocky conversation in terms of audio quality, having a little bit of a connection issue today, but that'll be fixed. And then also, before we wrap this up, I do want to ask you, Ryan, about the new album, Go Climb a Tree. Is there kind of like a favorite tune on the album for you for whatever reason, and maybe in terms of what's fun for you to play, or just whatever song you think is most interesting you'd like to share with the listeners that perhaps we ought to check out?
Oh, like the favorite song that we recorded on there? It's probably one of the tune sets. There's a tune set called the Galician Dinky, which sounds kind of funny. It's a tune set. The first tune is it's a Galician kind of Spanish tune. I love. I think it's really, really fun. And then the next tune goes into like I don't know the name of these tunes, but it's kind of a heavier feel. Then the third tune goes into a straight like bossa nova or sorry, samba. But the songs, we're really proud of the songs as well. You know, that we did a lot of craft into it. Steve did a great job writing these songs with that. Yeah, I'm just really excited about it. So.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you should be. Congratulations on the Billboard #1 for the world music category. That's definitely really exciting. You guys deserve it. It's a fantastic album. So I'm glad to hear that that's going so well for you. And I guess I'll see you at the next Get Shamrocked.
I appreciate it, brother. See you then.
Well, that was Ryan Lacey with Gaelic Storm with us. A huge thank you to Ryan for taking the time out of his schedule to talk to us on the Holidays in the Sun podcast. And now we're going to go ahead and play that tune he recommended to us from the new album, Go Climb a Tree. This song is the Galician Dinky. This concludes part 1 of episode 2 of Holidays in the Sun. Be sure to like and follow the Facebook page. You can find it at just Holidays in the Sun podcast on Facebook. The podcast is available for free at the iTunes Store. It's also on SoundCloud, and fairly shortly will also be available on YouTube as well. On part 2 of this episode, I'll be speaking with Annette Ezekiel Kogan, who is the accordionist and singer in a klezmer group in New York City called Golem. And I'll also be speaking to the Rakaja Klezmer Orchestra from Lithuania. So don't miss it. It's going to be an exciting episode. It will feature music from both of those groups as well as many others.